Hey guys, it's Sign here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing another Conan the Barbarian issue review. Now, before we start here, as you're watching this, I'm going to be at Robert E. Howard Days or Howard Days down in Cross Plains, Texas. Hopefully, I will have had the chance to meet Jim Sub and Jeff Shanks by now, and I will have gotten them to sign my books because if I remember correctly, Jim Sub put on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it that he was going to attend the event. He was going to have a panel there, so will Jeff Shanks, and they are going to do signatures. At least Jim Sub is. I don't think Jeff Shanks is going to, but I will ask him if I get the chance to see him, right? So, yeah, I will let you guys know how this event goes in the next, issue review, but I think that it's going to be really, really cool. It's going to be the first convention I go to at all, and it's not really a convention, it's more like a retreat, according to Jeff Shanks. And speaking of Jeff Shanks, he had an interview recently with Stitch and Dogs. I can't remember his name. Like, I know, I mean, does he even say his name in the video? I can't remember, but yeah, Stitch and Dogs did an interview with Jeff Shanks to kind of start the celebration for Howard Days. And they actually mentioned me in their video. So that was really, really cool. Both of them seem to know me, which is great. I mean, they interact with me, so of course they would know me, but like, it's just really cool to have other people in the sphere that you work in recognize you, right? And well, work in, in quotation mark, because this isn't a job for me. This is just for fun. But it's really cool and really interesting. And I really appreciate that they both talked, about what the stuff they talked about. Mostly they mentioned me because they were talking about how there really isn't like a Gen Z, like Conan fan base, which I don't necessarily think is true. I think that there is a certain level of them or a certain amount of them, but we're pretty rare. And you kind of have to find a specific group of people to be able to find them, right? That's mostly because I think that besides this comic book, there really hasn't been anything that really drove Conan to popularity in our age, right? Which is more or less what Jeff and Stitch and Dogs mentioned, right? So yeah, hopefully, 20 years from now, this comic book that we're talking about today is, the reason why people are fans of Conan, right? But I really think a Conan animated series, like something adult, right? Like something, honestly, like the guy that did Primal should just do Conan for like 12 episodes. Just do 3 stories from the Conan mythos. Maybe do the Phoenix on the what's it called? The Phoenix on the Sword, the Tower of the Elephant, and the Queen of the Black Coast, and do that for a season. Make it 10 episodes or whatever, however long it takes, and then just release that. Put it on HBO Max. Make it a seasonal or like a weekly event thing. And I think that with that, you would bring Conan back into popularity, and then at the end of each of those shows, show a screen grab of the Conan stuff that's going on currently, right? I think Heroic Signatures is doing a great job at what they're doing, trying to bring everything together, make it all big and important and meaningful. But the comic book sphere is pretty small, and most people that are in it are older than 30, right? So it's kind of hard to really use that as a way to create new fans that are younger, right? I might be the only guy that's younger than 45, right, to talk about Conan on the internet when it comes to these comic books, right? I mean, there's some other guys, like Secret Fire Books, he talks about Conan too, but he talks about the original source material, right? He did a story about Robert E. Howard's boxing stories recently as well. But he's the only other guy that I know that does that is in my age range, right? So I don't know. I think there is a need to push Conan to the younger generations, but I'm not really sure how to best achieve that beyond a television show, right? An animated TV show, to be specific, right? But I don't know. Or maybe release Conan as a manga, right? Like in the same way that DC has done that compact edition, right? And how Invincible also has those little small versions, right? But I don't know. I think that there is an interesting kind of concept there. And I do think that the animated show is probably the best way to do that, right? But enough jibber jabber. Let's actually get into the comic book here. So I'm a few weeks late, and that's because I was at home visiting my parents. So I was away from my comic book shop. But here we have Conan the Barbarian, issue number 11, by Jim Zub, Rob Del Torre, and Diego Rodriguez. And Diego Rodriguez is a person that I struggle with. I don't like the way he colors stuff, but in this case, I think he did a great job. I didn't really notice any issues with the coloring, even in darkness, right? So I think that he's been working on it. He's been making it better. Actually, let me fix the lighting really quick. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. I had to change the the angle of my blinds so I wouldn't have so much light coming in, right? But yeah, like I was saying, Diego Rodriguez is a person that I've struggled with in terms of his coloring ability. I didn't like it in the Doug Braithwaite arc. I didn't really like it last issue when, you know, the start of this arc happened, or 2 issues ago. However, at this point, I think I'm used to it. And also, I think that he's done a better job with it, right? There's less of those weird orange washes everywhere that I don't like, right? So that's good. Overall, this issue was great. I really, really had a fun time with it. I think it's amazing. And my idea about the Red Slayer woman not really mattering, and so not getting a name because she's going to die this issue, did come true, right? She does die. And Conan does grieve her to an extent, but not enough, right? Like, or enough for Conan, but not enough for like what we think he's going through right now, right? Because this is supposed to be literally like weeks after Bella dies, right? According to the timeline that, you know, we kind of understand there to be, right? And so he really should struggle more with this idea of a woman dying, right? And I guess he didn't struggle with the lady from the previous arc either, but that was a bit different, I think, because he was like desensitized, or he wasn't really there for her. But with the Red Slayer woman, I feel like there was a more genuine, kind of more warm connection. And so when she dies, and he doesn't really react too much, like he doesn't really react enough, in my opinion. I felt a bit unhappy with that. However, then you can really kind of reason it out. It's like, well, Conan is reacting like that because he's in a battle. He can't really allow his emotions to rule him right now. He's busy, right? And from that perspective, I kind of understand where he's coming from, right? But I feel like if the love of your life recently died, and then a female character that you had relations with died, and then another one died, and this one you had a better connection with, I feel like you'd be really fucking shitty. Like, you would feel really, really bad. And that's not really what we saw. We saw him upset. We saw him kind of not believe that she was dead, but we didn't really get to see him like truly upset, right? So I don't know. I mean, you can disagree with me on that one. I think that's probably going to be an unpopular opinion on my part, but it's kind of what I think, right? So yeah. But anyway, so that was kind of in the middle of the story. So let me go back to the beginning. It opens up with Conan talking to Yog Kosha. He is told, you're here, but not really here. You're kind of tied to me so I can see you, but you're also tied to others through this bloodline of people, right? And we don't understand why others can see him. Like Yog Kosha says, you are tied to me, or destinies or fates or our lives align at some point in the future, and so you are visible to me. We can see each other, right? However, that's not really true literally for anyone besides Brule and Cole in Volusia, right? So how can anyone else see him? Like, maybe I misunderstood that, right? But it's important that this conversation happens because Yog Kosha also tells us, you're not just tied to me, you're tied to the Pix, you're tied to Briza, and she is a direct descendant of what's his name? Of Brule, right? And so there's a connection there that is powerful enough for your interactions to exist, to happen, right? Then we move on from there. They make it to a castle or special temple, right? Now that they're on the shores of the land where Cole is from, right? And they get to see this giant armor. And at this point, I'm reminded of Black Colossus, I think it is, right? The one where Conan sees these giant pillars that look like people that are black, that look too real to not be real, right? it kind of has a similar feeling to that, but of course this is different because these are more like armor pieces, right? These are just armor stands, right? And then we also get to see a statue of Yakosha with wings behind him, and of course this is because apparently these people have some reverence for Yakosha or Yakosha's people, right? Because we know that from the Tower of the Elephant, more than just Yakosha came to Earth, right? Because Yakosha is like an ancient alien, right? And Conan is told that he will be king. And he doesn't really believe it, but this is kind of an important moment because Conan is snapped out of the reverie of the remembrance by Cole being like, do the words of a king not speak to you enough, right? Or something like that. And Conan is like, oh, sorry, I'm distracted. And they have a conversation here. I can't remember exactly what it's about, but it's more or less just about that. And then it's time to move on. They manage to open this giant door through a use of ingenuity. Basically, the door is too heavy. They can't really wedge their weapons in. And if they do, they don't get enough leverage. And so they look back at the giant spears. And then they're like, well, this is a much better lever. So let's use this to gain more leverage instead of our small swords when we can use these giant spears, right? And so they manage to pry open the door. And as they pry open the door, this horde of beastmen shows up, right? And these are kind of similar to the monkey man from Rogues in the House or the people from Opar in Tarzan, right? Like these beastmen, these kind of like Neanderthal, but more like de-evolved humans, right? I guess also that's what more or less the pics are supposed to look like in Conan's time, based on the histories that Robert E. Howard wrote, right? So these human, not human, half human things attack, and this is a big, great battle, and this battle is basically never ending because there's so many of these things, right? But Conan and Cole and Brule manage to make it through because they're so badass and so awesome. They kill many monsters, but because there's so many of them, death follows, right? And most of the Red Slayers die, including Conan's female companion, who we don't have the name of because of what I mentioned earlier in the review. And I really do need to ask Jim about this at Howard Days if I get the chance. And all the Red Slayers except for one die. And at this point, Conan is surprised because Cole kneels and honors his dead. He tells them that he is sorry that they died, that he led them to death, that he will not let their death be in vain. And it's really cool. I really like this moment. I think it's really valuable to show us that Cole is a great king, that Cole is a man that cares about his subjects, and also maybe shows us why Conan might end up being the same way, right? I can't remember which story it is, but Conan has a moment where in one of the stories, he talks about how he has to go home to protect his harem because the man that took over his place is not willing to take care of the people that are his, right? And so Conan is worried about the difficulties that the women in his Herolachio are gonna go through, right? And it's not really the same, and you can argue that maybe there's it's less noble than this, but it kind of has a similar vibe to it, right? Like where a character knows that he basically owns these other characters, right? Conan and Cole own the women in his Herolachio and these Red Slayers, but they still care about them enough to try to protect them the best they can, right? So I really appreciate that. I think it works out well. And I really like that Conan was surprised that Cole honored his warriors. Then they take a quick rest, and then they manage to continue on, right? And there's this amazing spread that Rob Del Toro excels at, right? Where there really is no panel. So you just kind of go through this winding kind of panel that is the whole page that really looks wonderful. And you don't really get lost because everything kind of has a flow to it that's really, really great. And honestly, the fact that I can't buy most of these double spreads that Rob Del Toro does as posters is a crime. I really want them to be available. I'm gonna kind of probably send an email to Heroic Signatures and ask them, hey, can you guys make some of these available for posters or as posters? I mean, honestly, I really wish that they would kind of provide some of these as posters in the comic books. But I think that comic books have long since stopped doing stuff like that, right? I mean, Sal from Comic Pop always mentions that they used to do this back in the 90s, but I don't think that they've ever done that in the modern age, right? Like the closest thing that they've done is when Dawn of DC started, DC put out a bunch of little bookmarks, right? I have one of them right there, I think. But I really wish that, Heroic Signatures would do something similar, right? Either put out some bookmarks that go with the books that they send, or a poster or something, right? A little bit extra to really appreciate all of the people that are making sure that Conan is so successful, right? So yeah, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, they make it past this awesome spread, and then they eventually make it to this death chamber. This sepulchre is the word that they use. I didn't know this was a word in English. I thought there was only a word in Spanish, but whatever. It's basically just a death chamber, right? And there's this sarcophagus, and Cole is actually really excited about this, but he kind of goes into his mania, right? Or whatever kind of word Brule uses for it, right? And this sarcophagus has the eye in the stone etched on it, right? So this is related to the Black Stone event that's coming. And as he pushes open the sarcophagus, something comes out from within it, and the something is Tulsa Doom, and it's so cool. However, in the story, The Cat in the Skull, which is the story that introduces us to Tulsa Doom, it's in the Cole the Exile, or Exile of Atlantis book from Del Rey. In The Cat in the Skull, when I read that story, I felt like Tulsa Doom was not like a badass, evil, skeleton wizard. I thought he was like Skeletor. He was just kind of funny and weird and like evil, but like stupid, right? But in this version, they really show him to be this really badass motherfucker, right? And he manages to prove this by stabbing Cole through the chest in a crazy, powerful way. So I really, really like this. And he does this with the Atlantean sword that Cole pulled out of the sarcophagus, right? And this Atlantean sword, of course, is the one that they use in the Conan movie, right? And I think that's actually only from the Conan movies. And then it was brought in to the comic books, right? So I actually appreciate that, as a relatively new fan to the Conan mythos, right? I really appreciate that they kind of include everything from everywhere, right? That it isn't just Robert E. Howard stuff. Because yes, Robert E. Howard is the originator. He is probably the best writer of Conan, but most people are not necessarily fans of Conan because of Robert E. Howard's writing. Beyond the fact that he's the reason it exists, right? Most of them are fans of the movies and the comic books and maybe the video games, right? And so those are not really necessarily Robert E. Howard's work, but they still deserve some reverence because they are the reason most of you guys are fans, right? So I actually really like that, but I understand that might be a disagreeable opinion for you guys, so I apologize in advance, but I really do like that they include all of this stuff, right? And so the men are defeated, but there is more to come, and we finish on the spread of Tulsa Doom overlooking the three men that are dead or nebulously on the floor somehow. And this was an amazing part of the story. Jeff's essay was also quite good. I don't really mention them all that often in this series of videos, but I do read them most of the time. Not always. It depends on whether I feel like reading it or I'm really absorbed in the story or stuff. But I do try to go back and read them at some point, and I have liked all of them, right? And he actually mentions The Cat in the Skull here in this essay, and he mentions how he is more or less the archetypical Lich character, right, or Lich character, and how he kind of is the foundation for Skeletor and Voldemort and all that sort of stuff, right? But like I said, to me, when I read The Cat in the Skull, Tulsa Doom didn't really come off as this badass evil character. He came off as like a goofy bad guy, and I think that's probably why the story was rejected, which is what Jeff mentions, right? And then the story gets retooled into something else later, but you can read the original on the in the Cole Omnibus, right? So, or in the Cole Del Rey edition book that collects all of Cole's adventures, right? So yeah, overall, great issue. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought down below, and thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys at Howard Days, right? So see you guys later.